India, a land of vibrant colors, ancient traditions, and a rich tapestry of faiths. From the snow-capped Himalayas to the tropical shores, India has long been a melting pot of religions, languages, and cultures. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains all call this vast subcontinent home. But in recent years, this harmonious coexistence has been tested. A shadow of religious extremism has fallen over India, sparking debates about the future of its secular democracy. The question on everyone's mind: is religious extremism on the rise in Modi's India? It's a complex issue with no easy answers. To understand, we need to look back at India's history, examine the current climate under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and listen to the voices of both supporters and critics. Only then can we grasp the challenges India faces in preserving its pluralistic fabric while navigating the complexities of religious sentiment in the 21st century. It's a story that goes beyond headlines and political rhetoric. It's about the lives of millions of Indians who aspire to live in a nation where faith and freedom go hand in hand. India's relationship with religion is deeply intertwined with its history. From ancient times, the subcontinent has been a melting pot of various faiths and spiritual practices, each contributing to the rich tapestry of Indian culture. For centuries, the subcontinent has witnessed periods of remarkable interfaith harmony alongside instances of conflict and tension. The coexistence of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and later Islam, Christianity, and Sikhism has shaped the social and cultural landscape of India. The Mughal era, for example, saw the flourishing of art and architecture that blended Islamic and Hindu motifs, a testament to the syncretic nature of Indian society. The Taj Mahal, Fatehpur Sikri, and other architectural marvels stand as enduring symbols of this cultural amalgamation. However, the British colonial period sowed seeds of division, often exploiting religious differences for political gain. The British employed a strategy of divide and rule, which exacerbated existing tensions and created new rifts among communities. The partition of India in 1947, which led to the creation of Pakistan, stands as a stark reminder of the violence that can erupt when religious identity becomes politicized. The mass migration, communal riots, and loss of lives during this period left deep scars on the collective memory of the subcontinent. Post-independence, India chose the path of secularism enshrined in its constitution. The framers of the constitution envisioned a nation where all religions could coexist peacefully and where the state would not favor any particular faith. This commitment to religious freedom and equality for all faiths was a cornerstone of the newly formed nation. Yet, challenges remained. The vision of a secular India was often tested by the realities on the ground, where religious identities continued to play a significant role in social and political life. Communal riots flared up periodically, exposing the fault lines that existed beneath the surface of Indian society. These episodes of violence highlighted the ongoing struggle to achieve true religious harmony and underscored the need for continued efforts towards reconciliation and understanding. Understanding this complex history of coexistence and conflict is crucial to contextualizing the current debate surrounding religious extremism in India. The past offers valuable lessons on the importance of dialogue, tolerance, and mutual respect in building a cohesive society. The legacy of the past continues to shape the present, influencing perceptions and fueling anxieties in a nation grappling with its multifaceted identity. As India moves forward, it must navigate these historical currents to forge a future where diversity is celebrated and unity is strengthened. The year 2014 marked a watershed moment in Indian politics. Narendra Modi, the charismatic leader of the Bharatiya Janata Party, swept to power on a wave of Hindu nationalism. The BJP, with its roots in the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, a Hindu nationalist organization, had long advocated for a more assertive Hindu identity in India's public sphere. Modi's ascendancy to the Prime Minister's office emboldened Hindu nationalist groups, some of whom felt empowered to promote their agenda more openly. Incidents of violence against religious minorities, particularly Muslims, began to make headlines with alarming frequency. The passage of the Citizenship Amendment Act in 2019, which critics argue discriminates against Muslim migrants, sparked widespread protests across the country. The government's crackdown on dissent further fueled accusations of a shrinking space for religious minorities and dissenting voices in India. The Modi era has undoubtedly ushered in a new chapter in India's story, one where the boundaries between religion and politics have become increasingly blurred. Whether this represents a turning point for religious freedom or a temporary blip in India's secular journey remains a subject of intense debate. Section 4. A New Dawn for Hinduism, the perspective of Modi's supporters. To understand the current climate in India, it's essential to consider the perspective of Prime Minister Modi's supporters. They form a significant and vocal part of the population, and their views shape much of the national discourse. For many Hindus, Modi's rise to power represents a long-awaited correction of historical wrongs. They see his leadership as a beacon of hope, a chance to reclaim a sense of pride and identity that they feel has been eroded over the years. They argue that for too long Hinduism has been relegated to the sidelines, while other religions, particularly Islam, have received undue attention and concessions. This sentiment is rooted in a complex history of religious and cultural interactions in India, where the balance of power and recognition has often been a contentious issue. The BJP's brand of Hindu nationalism, they believe, is not about marginalizing minorities, but about reclaiming India's Hindu heritage and restoring it to its rightful place at the heart of the nation's identity. They see it as a movement to celebrate and preserve their cultural and religious traditions, which they feel have been overshadowed in the past. They see Modi's policies, such as the abrogation of Article 370 in Kashmir, as bold steps towards righting historical injustices and unifying India under a common cultural thread. This move, in their view, is a necessary action to integrate the region more fully into the Indian state and to ensure equal treatment for all its citizens. Furthermore, Modi's supporters point to his economic policies and development agenda as proof of his commitment to all Indians, regardless of their faith. They highlight his efforts in building infrastructure, promoting industrial growth, and creating job opportunities as evidence of his inclusive approach to governance. They argue that his focus on infrastructure, job creation, and poverty alleviation benefits everyone and transcends religious divides. By improving the overall economic landscape, they believe Modi is working towards a more prosperous and unified India. For them, the current debate about religious extremism is often overblown, a tactic employed by opposition parties and Western media to discredit Modi and undermine his vision for a strong and prosperous India. They feel that these criticisms are exaggerated and fail to acknowledge the positive changes and progress being made under his leadership. In their eyes, Modi's tenure is about fostering a sense of national pride and unity, where every citizen, regardless of their background, can contribute to and benefit from the nation's growth. They envision a future where India's rich cultural tapestry is celebrated, and its economic potential is fully realized, paving the way for a new dawn for Hinduism and the country as a whole. Section 5. Voices of Dissent. Critics raise concerns about rising intolerance. However, not everyone shares this optimistic view of Modi's India. While some celebrate the economic growth and development, others are deeply troubled by the social and political climate that has emerged. Critics, both within India and internationally, have voiced deep concerns about the shrinking space for dissent and the perceived rise in religious intolerance under his watch. They argue that the atmosphere of fear and division is palpable, affecting the daily lives of many. They point to a pattern of hate speech, discrimination, and violence directed at religious minorities, particularly Muslims, as evidence of a worrying trend. This pattern, they say, is not isolated but rather indicative of a broader societal shift. The lynching of Muslims by cow vigilante groups has been one of the most shocking manifestations of this intolerance. These groups, often operating with impunity, have targeted individuals based on mere suspicions of cow slaughter or beef consumption. The imposition of bans on beef consumption has further exacerbated tensions. For many, these bans are seen not just as dietary restrictions, but as an attack on cultural and religious practices. The vandalization of mosques and other religious sites has also contributed to a climate of fear and insecurity among India's Muslim community. These acts of vandalism are not just physical attacks but symbolic ones, striking at the heart of religious identity. Critics argue that the government's response to these incidents has often been slow and inadequate, further emboldening the perpetrators. They claim that the lack of swift and decisive action sends a message of tacit approval, or at the very least, indifference. Moreover, they express concern about the erosion of democratic institutions and the silencing of critical voices. The health of a democracy, they argue, is measured by its ability to tolerate and even encourage dissent. Journalists, Activists and intellectuals who dare to question the government's policies or speak out against religious intolerance have faced intimidation, harassment, and even arrest. This crackdown on free speech and expression is seen as a direct threat to democratic values. For critics, the current situation represents a dangerous departure from India's secular ideals and a threat to the very fabric of its diverse society. They argue that the principles of pluralism and inclusivity, which have long been the bedrock of Indian democracy, are under siege. They fear that India is sliding towards majoritarianism, where the rights of minorities are increasingly under threat. This shift, they warn, could lead to a more divided and polarized society, undermining the unity and integrity of the nation.